Hello grapes! Andy here, and today I wanted to bring you a list of books that you might enjoy if you love these movies. So I'm going to name the movie and then I'm going to give you the book and a little bit of description of each one, and hopefully you can find something else to add to your TBR and read. Let's begin. The first one, if you guys like The Hills Have Eyes, you will probably enjoy Jack Ketchum's Off Season. Now, I will say, out of all of these books, this one's probably the most brutal and intense, so keep that one in mind. Also, it's different than the movie in that the movie is about a group of, tourists. They're like driving through to get to a different state. They end up taking a shortcut advised by one of the gas station workers, and end up being trapped in this area where experiments were performed and the people that live there are deformed because of these experiments or bombs that have been set off. So they end up murdering whoever comes through their area. So this one is different in that it's just cannibals. However, if this is correct, it says that the Jack Ketchum book was inspired by the 1977 film The Hills Have Eyes. So that's probably why they do feel similar. This one, pretty intense though. It's about the woman. Our main character is a woman, and she has her sister and her friends coming with her to stay at this remote cabin in Maine. But what they don't know is that there are a group of cannibals that kind of live in this underground cave system by the sea that end up abducting them and trying to cook them and eat them. So yeah, brutal, fun, just like 300 pages of cannibalistic mayhem. It's a fantastic book, and I do think if you enjoy The Hills Have Eyes, you will really like that one, even if there are, obviously, there's going to be similar differences and similarities between these movies and books, but that one, such a fun book. The next one we have is called When Evil Lurks. I believe it's a horror film from Argentina, if I'm not mistaken. This one is just so fun. So it's about this family in this small town, and when a demon is about to be birthed and brought to earth, they try to escape before it's too late, but it just unleashes this evil that just takes over. It's so bloody, it is so fun, and it really did remind me of Boys in the Valley by Philip Fracassi. This book is so fun. This is about a boarding school where, I think it's in the early 1900s, where they have, I don't know the terminology, but priests or whatever, and there is a group of people from a few towns over that end up coming to the orphanage trying to seek help for a man. He has occult symbols carved into his flesh, and they're trying to help him. He's obviously, something's going on with him, and he ends up passing away and unleashing evil across the entire orphanage. And so you slowly see it start to take over the kids, the priests, the people there, and it is such a fun, twisted, dark ride. Again, so bloody. It's just a bloody good time. I mean, there's really not much else to say about that one. The next one is if you like the Evil Dead franchise, particularly the two most recent films, so like the 2013 and then the one that was just released. But I think even the original film plays into this one too. I think you'd really enjoy Maggie's Grave. I don't have this one with me, my friend's borrowing it, but this one is about a small, I think it's a Scottish town, and there's lore that there was a witch that lived on top of this town in this house. And she ended up being murdered by the town, but she still has her grave, and her cottage that she lived in, it still remains on the top of the town. We follow these kind of like the only teens left in this town. Everyone's left. It's kind of like this rundown, teeny tiny town. An American tourist comes in and they tell her about Maggie's grave, and she demands to see it. She just has to see it, which, I mean, I don't blame her. She's annoying in the book, but I don't blame her. I would have to see it too. They end up accidentally raising Maggie from her grave in the most absurd, amazing way possible. And just mayhem ensues. I mean, this book is, again, so freaking bloody, which I think is why you would like it if you like the Evil Dead franchise. It's not a possession book, but it still gave me that same, like, just a bloody good time of a book. So I think you would still enjoy it if you've watched those movies and really enjoyed pretty much any of them. I think you'd like Maggie's Grave. This was just such a fun read for me. The next one that we have is It. If you like the movie It, I think that you'll like Summer of Night by Dan Simmons. This one feels like it follows kind of that same vein as It, where it's a group of children. It takes place in the 60s, and they're noticing something is taking over the town. They're starting to notice weird things that are going on, supernatural things that are happening, when everyone else seems to not notice what's going on. So they kind of take it upon themselves to try to defeat the evil that is trying to take over their town. It's so nostalgic feeling, and it does feel like It in the kid part of the movie. It's about their friendship and the nostalgia of being a child and growing up and da-da-da, but it's also about defeating this evil of the town as well. Another one too that I want to mention is actually Blackmouth by Ronald Malfi. So where this feels kind of like the kids side of It, Blackmouth kind of feels like the adult side of It. So that book is about a group of older people. I think they're in their 30s, and they get together and they kind of relive their past and this strange man that interacted with them when they were kids. And as kids, it didn't seem as bad, or they didn't notice kind of the red flags that they maybe should have. But now in retrospect, they're seeing how weird everything was. And so they're kind of like reliving their past. There's more to it than that, but I don't want to give too much away for that one. The back doesn't really give you much of a description, but that also feels very much like the same realm of It too. So yeah, highly recommend those if you like that one. This one is going to be probably the one that's most different. This is The Fog by James Herbert, but I still feel like there is enough similarity that I think you would enjoy this one if you like the movie The Fog. Now, this is one of my favorite horror films. The original, of course, the remake is absolute trash. But this one is very different, but I think also fun enough that you would enjoy it if you like this movie. Don't get me wrong, I much prefer the movie. And this book, it's not perfect, and there are some parts that I didn't like about it, but I still think it was worth the read and fun in its own right. So the movie The Fog, I mean, both of them, it's about this fog, right? And as it rolls in, it brings terrible things onto the town. But the book is really about how the government unleashes this fog from below the earth, inside the earth. As it rolls through different towns, it either turns people, well, it makes them mad, and it either makes them harm themselves or harm other people. So there's a solid 100 or 200 pages of just death and destruction and mayhem, and that part I really enjoyed about it. I didn't particularly love the last 100 pages. It's more just kind of about the government trying to trap the fog, so it didn't hold my attention as much. But I still think that it's worth a read, and I still think that it's just fun to read. Yeah, this like evil fog that goes through and turns people crazy. So definitely different from the movie, but I think you'll see why I included it on the list. Next, Friday the 13th. If you enjoy Friday the 13th, I think that you will enjoy Ex-Boogeyman by Christopher Triana. Now this is one that it does get a bit bloody and violent too, you know, like there are body parts being pulled off and people get beat to death with them and stuff. This one gives you this totally the same slasher summer camp kind of feel that Friday the 13th does. And it's just like a silly good time. Not that the book isn't well written or that the characters aren't well developed or anything like that, but it just is a slasher book. And I don't know that I've ever read a book that really felt like watching a slasher movie. I mean, the only thing I can even think that comes close is like Clown in a Cornfield kind of thing. But this really felt like reading a slasher. It was just something that I've never read before. So I really enjoyed this one. It's about a man who used to be a horror villain of this popular franchise of movies. Well, now that they're older, they're remaking the movies, but they're going a different direction. So they're not casting him as the lead. And his identity, his life revolves around being this horror villain. So when he starts to see that the movie's not being taken the way that he wants it to be taken, he starts descending into madness and becoming the villain in the movie. He ends up returning to the water rafting camp that the movies were filmed at and just murders everyone. And at the end of the day, it's just a fun slasher. So if you like Friday the 13th, I think you'll really enjoy that one. Next up, Pet Sematary. I think that if you like that movie, you'll enjoy Bone White by Ronald Malfi. There's a few things that really reminded me of Pet Sematary while I was reading this book. One of them is just kind of the extent you would go to for a loved one. So we have Paul. He has a twin brother who was up in Alaska in this remote village or town. He was just kind of traveling and living his life and being aloof. He's always been more of the aloof twin. But he ends up going missing, and Paul just never hears from him again. There's a man in that town that confesses to murdering a bunch of people and is bringing cops to their graves to uncover them slowly to try to figure out who these people are that were murdered. I mean, the cops are trying to figure it out. So they arrest this man. It's all over the news, and Paul ends up seeing it. And so he flies to Alaska, and he is just adamant that his brother is in one of those graves. It's the only thing that makes sense, right? I mean, he was there, and then he just goes missing and disappears, and now this guy is coming and talking about murdering a bunch of people. So he goes to the town, and the town is very weird, very superstitious. There's a lot of like lore and like folklore-y weird stuff surrounding the town. They're very fearful of the woods that surround them, and aren't particularly kind to outsiders coming into their space. Paul is investigating on his own because he's not really finding any answers. Things are kind of slow to come about. And he ends up going into the woods surrounding the town, which people have warned him not to do. And there is a lot of similarity in this sense too. I think with Pet Sematary, I did get the same like Wendigo, creepy, foresty type of feel as I got from reading and watching Pet Sematary that I get reading this book. And then there's also some supernatural elements as well that feel similar. So yeah, I think if you like Pet Sematary, you'll really like that book. That is all of my book recommendations based on horror movies. I hope this video was helpful in some way. I know they're not exactly identical, but I think they're similar enough that if you read the books, I think you'll understand why I recommended them, hopefully. I also have done this before, so I'm gonna leave the video here so you guys can click on it and watch the part 1 if you feel. I'll also leave it linked down below. And feel free to leave your list down below of horror books that remind you of horror movies. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon with another horror video. Bye guys!